Good morning to everyone to this morning webinar. I hope everyone is well awake, had a coffee, had a tea, and is ready to learn some interesting things. We've got a very interesting agenda, I think, on a most interesting topic. So welcome again, everyone. So the CIB webinar is organized together with our colleagues of UCLG Learning and UCLG Gold Research. And I think it's inspiring to see how many exchanges are taking place within our network, within UCLG, especially in these times of Corona. I think it's what I find inspiring and energizing to still find each other and to learn from each other. So we had, for instance, the CIB webinar on gender about 2 weeks ago, the successful UCLG live learnings on COVID-19 measures, and a lot of other things yet to come. So that's great, I think. So my name is Stan Abma. I work at the Secretariat of the Capacity and Institution Building Working Group, so the CIB working group of UCLG. And I'm one of the co-organizers of this meeting today. I also manage some other projects. So I work for the Association of Netherlands Municipalities. I also work for a capacity building project in Ukraine and in Iraq. Yeah, and let me just conclude with this first part to say that we're very looking forward to a fruitful exchange today on this topic of SDG reporting at the subnational level. Let me quickly show you the agenda of today's meeting. So again, welcome everyone. I will start with a brief introduction of the CIB working group. So who's behind the working group, what are we doing? And then Rafael will take over with an introduction on the SDG localization process, followed by Anna, as you all can see, on the SDG reporting process at the subnational level. And we've got a very interesting, and we're delighted to have them, a more practical case of Kenya, which will be elaborated on. And afterwards there will be space to just go through some questions asked during the webinar. So please feel free, everyone, to share comments, to share questions. That can be either shared via the chat box. So I think at the bottom of the middle of the screen, there's this text balloon. If you hover over it and you click on it, then the chat box appears. So please drop your questions and we'll come back to that after the panelists have shared their contributions. But you can also share it with the Q&A component of Zoom, which also can be found as one of the features below in the screen. So the objective of the webinar, once more, the webinar will provide the opportunity for CIB members, but also for all the local and regional government associations to participate in a dialogue about their role in the SDG localization process. Special attention will be paid to the reporting process of the SDGs at the subnational level. This is in particular, yeah, just to wrap this up, relevant as usually the aims to further increase in the presence of local and regional governments and their associations at central events such as the high-level political forum, the HLPF, and throughout the voluntary national reports, also in this calendar year. And although we're not certain how the HLPF will take place and if this year, of course, but this still remains an important and relevant topic this calendar year. So we're happy to dive in on that. Yes, please, the next slide. So just to briefly tell you a bit more about the CIB working group. The CIB is a voluntary community of practitioners, members of UCLG, who are engaged in international development cooperation. So it is one of the working groups of UCLG. CIB has over more than 50 active members, and we try to exchange on practices to learn from each other in very different ways. So we work on publications, organize webinars, and try to link up with all interesting other departments of UCLG and other organizations. So CRB, the working group, is chaired by VNG International and FCM. So Peter Knip, that's the director of VNG, is the chair. Co-chair is Sébastien Hamel. And as I briefly mentioned before, together with Jesse Post and Julia Estrada Londono, we are running the secretariat of the working group. Yeah, thank you, Rafael. So, of course, the SDGs are one of the main topics I think we're working on SDCIB working group. So we see a lot of inclusion of the SDGs in international programming, whether it's a gender component related to SDG 5 and SDG 10 on inequalities in general. Yeah, it's just one of the main topics I think which is relevant to exchange upon. So we see some other activities of the CRB working group who we're involved with. And we can tell you a lot more about those if you would be interested in that. Please let us know. You can find our contact information, I think, at one of these slides, one of the previous slides. Yeah, just to also briefly mention, we will share the PowerPoint presentation afterwards. We will also record it. So there will be a lot of possibilities, I think, to also further engage and discuss things after the webinar. And I think if you're okay, Rafael, I would like to give the floor to you as the first panelist. Thanks much, and we're looking forward to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much, Stan, for this kind introduction. So, good morning also from my side to all the participants who joined us at this early European hour. Let me introduce myself very briefly. I'm Rafael Zedlitsky, and I'm working with UCLG World Secretariat in the area of learning and cooperation. And what a big part of our work, what we do, is working on the localization process and to support our members and our network with this task. So, as I already mentioned, UCLG Learning is dedicated to a good part to the localization process of the SDGs, and actually to all of the other global agendas as well. But the SDGs in particular receive a lot of attention from us as the organization. And in this regard, we also developed a series of learning models together with the partners from the Global Task Force for Local and Regional Governments and with our partners UNDP and UN Habitat to foster this process. And I'm sure that many of you have come across these models already, these learning tools. There are our famous learning models on the SDGs, also maybe structured into Model 1, Model 2, Model number 3. I don't know, maybe some of you have been even part of one of our training of trainers workshops, which we facilitated since 2017. And maybe it's good to highlight for those who are not so familiar with these models that these are learning guidebooks, which enable, on the one hand, a very easy learning process and awareness raising process on the SDGs, and at the same time a basis for workshops. And workshops where we train trainers, which means that every participant of a workshop should be able, after participating, to become a trainer themselves. And in this way, we are trying to create like a big network of trainers using somehow a snowball effect of scaling up people who can facilitate such workshops and spread the awareness and the knowledge on the SDG localization. So I've said we have 3 models at the moment. We have the model number 1, which is basically trying to raise awareness for the whole localization process. Was the first model we launched back in 2017 already. And then we have the second model, which is more focusing on actually how can we align local policies to the SDGs. And then following this, this logic, we have the model number 3, which is going to be the focus of today's webinar, which deals with the reporting of the localization process. So in my presentation, I will focus today basically on Model 1 to bring ourselves all on the same page on basic terms, what means localization and what's the role of local governments and local government associations, and then dive in very quickly on model number 3 before handing over to my colleagues from UCLG Gold. Maybe before starting into the Model 1, just a quick overview of this figure, which shows a little bit, I think, the roles and the different scales of all of us where we work, UCLG World Secretariat, Local Government Association, and local cities and municipalities on the ground. So when we talk about learning, we always think that it must be stressed that this is a bottom-up approach. So learning definitely must come from the municipalities, from the cities, and then local government associations. And we as the World Secretariat can try to scale this action up to share the practices that work and try to facilitate a learning network, but always with a bottom-up approach. When we come to reporting and to monitoring, maybe this might be sometimes a little bit different, as definitely it needs maybe a focal point who can facilitate and collect all this knowledge. So that's why we have somehow in this graphic, I think, very illustrative and bottom-up and top-down processes regarding the different scales where we all work together. But now let me already start with a very brief introduction, our learning model number 1. So we're talking about the SDG localization. And we're talking today especially about the role of local government associations, which we believe have a very, very critical role and which also make a good part of the CIB membership. So what does localization mean? So I think it's very important when we talk about localization to have clear that it's not just the implementation of the SDGs or any other global agenda at the local level. It refers more to looking at these agendas from a local lens. So it means actually considering the different local realities and then start to look at the achievement of a global agenda from this perspective. Meaning we have to consider local realities when we set the goals, the targets, when we determine the means of implementation, and when we discuss decide which indicators to use to measure the monitor the progress. So in other words, this means basically or refers to 2 aspects. So on the one hand, localization refers to how local and regional governments can contribute to the achievement through local action. And on the other hand, as the Agenda 2030 is also somehow the outline for the Global Development Agenda, the SDGs inspire directly development policy also at the local level. So why does this matter so much? Or maybe to say it in a little bit more provocative terms, why do we as UCLG and all membership pay so much attention to this issue, and we don't get tired of mentioning and talking about the localization of the SDGs? It is simply because such a big part of the SDGs must be delivered by the local and the regional level. There are studies which say that probably about 65% of all SDG targets are a local or regional competence. And it's simply because of this, that actually if we want to achieve the Agenda 2030 within the next, well, we have basically 10 years to go, then we must integrate very strongly the local and regional level. Coming to the local government associations, a little bit the focus of today's webinar, as I've said, they have also a very critical role. I think when we maybe think back about the figures showed at the very beginning of the different scales, I think it's clear that local government associations have somehow a role as bridge, as nexus maybe, who can link the local level with global. And I think that's their critical role also in the localization process. Just think about our huge membership, and we're not going to be able to be always in contact and reach out to every city, to every municipality. And that's when actually local government associations become very crucial, because they're somehow our amplifier to all municipalities, but also have a very important role in other aspects, especially as the counterpart of national governments and as the official representative of local and regional governments within each country. So this was this very quick conclusion of model 1. I hope we're now all on the same page and we all have the same understanding of the localization process. And let's maybe then go directly to the model number 3, which deals with the role of local government associations in the achievement of the 2030 agenda. And we have basically to discuss, I think, 4 very important aspects and competences of local government association when we talk about the achievement of the 2030 agenda. On the first, it's the awareness raising. So we sometimes like to say that actually local government associations are catalyzers, because they can catalyze the awareness raising process, and then they can disseminate actually all the materials, for example, we prepare or the United Nations prepare at the local level in their countries. Second, advocacy. It's a very important point, and I think also deeply rooted in the tradition of local government associations. And regarding the localization process, it's basically to make sure that the national government takes into account local and regional governments when it comes to the SDG localization. Further on, the third point, supporting in the implementation. So that's basically the good part, learning and cooperation. That's what we are doing very much also in my team at the World Secretariat. So it's how can local government associations support directly their membership in the country in the localization process. And last, but very important, that's therefore highlighted in orange, what we especially focus on today, the monitoring, evaluation and reporting of the SDGs. This is a very important exercise, and it is also an exercise where UCLG, as facilitator of the Global Task Force for Local and Regional Government, plays a very important role, as we are trying every year to provide an overview on the implementation and the status of the localization process. And therefore we need all local government associations to participate, to collect the knowledge, and to have an overview how this process is going on in their country. But anyway, I'm sure that my colleague Anna from the Gold team is going to explain much more detailed, much better than I could do this process. And I will leave it for the moment to her to continue this part. And I'm looking forward to hear from all of you during the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafa. Thank you, Sam, for your presentation. Rafa, for the introduction to the SDG localization process. My name is Ana Calvete. I work for the research team within UCLG, and I'm very happy to see that many people are here showing interest in the SDG reporting process. So let's get started. Reporting is essential to the achievement of the 2030 agenda for several reasons. It gives key information, feedback, learning mechanisms at every stage of the implementation process. It provides scope for inclusiveness and a broad level of participation, fostering the sense of ownership and improving coordination with other stakeholders who also contribute to the SDGs. In the same vein, it promotes greater transparency and makes decision-making more accountable to citizens. LRGs, their associations, and other actors can learn from each other's experiences while they share their own and help improve those of other stakeholders in a collaborative manner. And also, SDG reporting can help to improve coordination between the different levels of government while fostering policy cohesion and the effective implementation of the SDGs. So for all of these, LRGs and their associations should be involved in SDG reporting. So how does this happen? The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development recommends that all member states from the North and from the South deliver voluntary national reviews, or VNRs. VNRs are regular and inclusive reviews of progress at the national and subnational levels, which are country-led and country-driven. They involve multiple stakeholders, amongst which LRGs should play a relevant role. The VNRs are the basis for regular reviews by the so-called High-Level Political Forum, or HLPF, which meets yearly under the auspices of ECOSOC in New York. The objective behind the VNRs is to make it possible for all UN member states to share their experiences, which will include successes, challenges, lessons learned, in order to make the implementation of the agenda more effective. VLRs also seek to improve policies, strengthen government institutions, and mobilize multi-stakeholder support and partnerships for the implementation of the SDGs. Next slide, please. After years of advocating for a seat at the global table, local and regional governments have found a specific space for them at the high-level political forum, which is the Local and Regional Governments Day. The picture you can see was taken last year in New York, and it shows the involvement of local and regional governments in SDG implementation. Every year, around 40 or 50 countries present their voluntary national reviews to the HLPF. This year, as you can see on the screen, it's 51 of them from all continents. During these first 4 years of implementation of the agenda, each year a set of SDGs were assessed in a more in-depth manner during the high-level political forum. This year, however, no particular SDGs are assessed. And this is because 2020 opens the so-called Decade of Action. So the edition of this year will focus on accelerated action and transformative pathways, realizing the Decade of Action and delivery for sustainable development. So they're actually looking for real action, innovation, things that go straight to the point for SDGs. So what is the role of LRGs and their associations in all of this? Towards the localization of the SDGs report carried out by UCLG on behalf of the Global Task Force, and which we will talk about later, stresses that the involvement of local and regional governments in the national mechanisms for coordination and reporting processes has been rather limited throughout this first cycle of the HLPF. The implementation of the SDGs requires strong subnational action to reach cities and territories. And in fact, as my colleague Rafa was saying, it is commonly mentioned that at least 65% of the 169 targets that the agenda contains could not possibly be achieved without the involvement of the SDGs. In practice, however, from 2016 to 2019, only a limited number of reporting countries have given LRGs an active role in the preparation of their voluntary national reviews, and the figure would be like around 42% of the countries who have reported have included LRGs in the process, or in the national mechanisms of coordination. The figure here is 34% only. European countries, followed by African and Latin American ones, have been the most inclusive in terms of LRG participation. LRG involvement in these processes is essential to create synergies, join forces, and ensure that local stakeholders are mobilized so as to avoid that no one and no place is left behind. As you can see, many countries still have to ensure greater collaboration between levels of government and a stronger involvement of LRGs in both VNR preparation and institutional coordination. Only well-integrated policies across all institutions can align implementation with effective whole of government and whole of society approaches. So what can we do from the local level? Next slide, please. Thank you. The first way to contribute to SDG reporting is, as said, participating in the elaboration of the VNRs of your country. But usually, unless you're a big city or a powerful region, LRGs do not have the power to go knock on the national government's door and ask for participation. So this means that it's easier when this is done through the local government association. So local government associations have a really big role here. In a couple of minutes, we will have the inspiring presentation of two members from two different Kenyan local government associations who will explain to us their joint experience in working hand in hand, both with the national level and the local governments in the SDG reporting process. The second way to contribute to SDG reporting is doing your own report. So local government associations can coordinate these countrywide reports that contribute best practices, impressions, and information on LRGs from across the territory. Single LRGs, on the contrary, can do their own individual report. These are usually called reviews or VLRs. Although it was the New York report in 2018 that opened the doors for many to consider global cities in implementing the SDGs, the reality is that many other cities have already produced similar documents so far. We have at least 38 voluntary local reviews published, such as those of the cities of Kitakyushu, Barcarena, Bristol, Cape Town, Taipei, but also regions or intermediate levels of government, such as the Basque Country, Busia, 4 Kenyan counties, the King, North Rhine-Westphalen, Oaxaca. So there are many examples. So how to develop a voluntary local review? It is important to know that no official or universal template exists. So there's no common document to which all VLRs may be referring as a unique legitimate source. And there is also no institution in charge of determining how VLRs have to be or institution that provides specific legitimacy. The Office of the UN Secretary General, in fact, did publish at the beginning standardized guidelines for national governments, which could be adapted to the local level. But the important idea is that any VLR is valid as long as it approaches SDG implementation from your local institutions. Now, 4 questions could arise when you embark on developing your own institution's VLR. You can see them on the screen, like who is being involved in the VLRs, where is the VLR process located within the larger institutional and policy scheme, what is the content of a VLR, how is it made, what's the process. So although we do not have time for exhaustive explanation here for each of these questions, we can go through them shortly. And you will see on the screen some questions for your reflection. They can help you a lot think how to approach all these questions. At the end of the presentation also, we will give you more information on the documents, guidelines, and repositories that you can access to get some more ideas. So first question, who is being involved in the VLRs? So most currently available VLRs are generally developed by the technical members of the administration, and they're backed by the political level in order to gain political legitimacy. It should be a joint effort of the several departments who usually, each of them specializes in the reporting of specific SDGs or specific areas that fall within their domain. Usually, the elaboration of the VLRs counts on the support of International Relations Department because they usually have a more extensive knowledge of the global arena. When developing a VLR, we should also think of involving our local stakeholders, scientists and technicians from university and research institutions, as for example, Bristol and Los Angeles did in their VLRs. We can also involve civil society organizations, whether individually or as a coalition, as happened in Canterbury, where it was precisely this local coalition who promoted the VLR, and then the Canterbury government joined. And also, we can also involve several branches of the national government, including a statistical office. We can involve the private sector. So this will make our VLR stronger and co-owned at the local level. So the next question is, where is the VLR located in the local, national, and global design? So since the inception, the SDGs have been seen as an effective framework to promote synergies among several policies to overcome silos and fragmentation because of their interconnected and indivisible nature. So many of the VLRs published so far are a testament of this siloing nature of the SDG framework. Not only does the implementation of the SDGs at the local level engage departments or offices that would otherwise remain at the fringes of the localization process, it also kind of forces local administrations to overcome internal barriers and opt for more cross-sectoral initiatives, institutional creation, and decision-making. So with this, what we want to say is that VLRs can contribute to impacting positively on the functioning of your own local administration. Reporting on one's progress is also a way for outreach to other institutions working on a particular goal or target, or also on the whole 2030 agenda. It serves to synchronize agendas with the agendas of the local CSOs, of the academia, your neighbor local and regional governments, the private sector, your local government association, and it can help you and your institution position itself also in the global arena Like for example, all the VLRs are now in the global arena and are being disseminated worldwide. And for another example, Ciudad de Mexico, for example, has participated with UCLG, ICLE, and the Global Task Force and promoted itself as a driver of change in this sense. So let's go to the third question. What is the content of a VLR? So firstly, one question, what structure should a VLR have? So I said there's no specific model to follow. The first option is to adapt the 2018 UN's proposal for national governments or the yearly VNR handbook published by UNDESA. This might be the easiest way for starters, as it offers a concrete structure that will need to be adapted to the local level. And it also allows for an easier comparison with the national VNR as regards context, enabling environment, and institutional change, which will help reinforce the potential of SDG localization. We can also follow no specific blueprint in a less institutionalized process. We can do as the Kenyan counties did, who produced a simple list of key localization highlights, methodology, means of implementation, outcomes, and lessons learned. Or we can do like Canterbury, whose VLR kind of cherry picks the most relevant SDGs for the community and the territory. Finally, we can follow different kinds of templates, such as our own national reporting mechanisms, action plans, or strategic documents, as did the state of Sao Paulo in Brazil. Now, about the length, it should always be considered that there is a significant diversity of resources within local governments, whether human, technical, or financial, to be allocated to the production of their voluntary local review. So this will most probably determine the amount of information and data that we can include. But for you to have an idea, the existing VLRs range from 15 to 200 pages. And again, all of them are valid and valuable. Finally, about the content and approach, it can vary as much as we want, and we'll give you some examples now. Bristol, for example, in the UK, has a 2-pager on each SDG, which provides locally sourced data for relevant indicators and an overview of core policies and initiatives. Barcarena, Brazil, limits its analysis to selected targets and adds recommendations for the future. New Taipei aligns certain SDGs with specific strategic priorities of the city and uses selected indicators on all SDGs. Sao Paulo approaches each SDG with several success stories and best practices. And the province of Santa Fe addresses those SDGs for which it has simply the most recent or adequate data available. So again, the idea is that documents of all sorts, of all types of length and density are contributing to this global conversation, and they should be kind of a galvanizer for other LRGs willing to contribute. So final question, how is the VLR made? The 2030 agenda is supposed to be monitored through a set of 232 indicators. However, as we all may know, the system cannot be fully accessed and adapted by LRGs because it lacks actual data, disaggregation, and technical know-how, and this affects the localization process substantially. The disaggregation of most indicators by gender, age, etc. at the local level is either complicated or impossible in many local contexts, as LRGs simply do not have enough resources or powers to access the information and or detail required by many of the indicators proposed. So measuring is consequently still a challenge for many LRGs. So what has been done in this regard? LRGs themselves have attempted to bridge this data availability gap, and we could say that the strategies can be grouped in 3 different approaches. Like, first approach, some VLRs have taken the official indicators and adapted them to the specificity of their local context, and they have reworked the terminology, method, and sources. VLRs from Los Angeles, Ciudad de Mexico, or Mannheim, for example, present these new sets of indicators. Others are using the already existing local indicators that they consider aligned with the official indicators, like the Basque Country, Sao Paulo, or La Paz. And finally, some VLRs have presented a qualitative assessment, sporadically accompanied by hard data. And this happens in places where data availability is lower, as happened with the 4 Kenyan counties who presented their VLRs, or the state of Oaxaca in Mexico. Of course, international institutions, as you will see, have tried to offer systematized sets of indicators for LRGs, such as UN Habitat and its City Prosperity Index that could be useful, SDS-10 and its global monitoring indicators, the European Commission and the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, the Reference Framework for Sustainable Cities. So if we go to the next slide, and I will finish with this. In any case, we can underline these 4 key recommendations that you see on your left-hand side. First is look for political legitimacy. The VLR should contribute to the constituency's sense of mission and long-term strategy. So search for the support of the elected representatives and officials. In the same vein, make it clear to what extent the VLR is a manifesto of the LRGs and its citizens' commitment to the agenda. Show how much it cross-pollinates with other local strategies, your local stakeholders' strategies, other like-minded local institutions' strategies, your national government strategies, or even international institutions' commitments and efforts. Third point, make it rigorous and effective. Try to use a set of indicators that is useful to you, as hard as it may be, but try it and think that the more information and data you can deliver, the more valuable your contributions will be and helpful for knowledge sharing with other LRGs, other levels of government, local stakeholders, etc. And finally, analyze the past and prepare for the future. Analyze the means of implementation that have been necessary for the localization of the agenda in your territory, financial, human, technical resources devoted to the process, institutional mechanisms that have been put in place, the policy initiatives that were needed, and learn from the positive and negative aspects and take some notes for the process that will continue after your VLR. So if you need more information, on the right of the image, you can see further resources, and we will be glad to share this presentation with you once this webinar is over. So, as we have announced earlier, UCLG is preparing the report towards the localization of the SDGs, which yearly emphasizes the effective role of LRGs in the process, underlining the trends observed. So why show it here? For 2 reasons, actually. First one is that as UCLG and part of the global task force, we count on all of you to develop this report. We need the data information about your participation in this national coordination mechanism and drafting of the VNRs. We need best practices of your institutions in the localization of the SDGs. So we kind of need you. And the second reason is that this is a very good start for you to reflect on the role played so far by your institution and take steps. Like, should we participate in the VNR? Should we try to do our own VLR? So for the first reason given before, we have created a survey. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this is especially important for the LRGs of those 51 countries that have already committed to submit their national reviews to the HLPF this year. For the second reason that I gave you, which is to show oneself, the constituency, the own country and the world, what has been done to achieve the agenda from your territory, this survey is crucial no matter where you are. You will reflect on what you have done so far in terms of SDG awareness, your relationship with the national authorities, and SDG implementation in your territories, with the 2 final questions on national urban policies and a table where you can share your best practices. Having this said, we will be glad to count on your contributions. The deadline has been extended now to the 30th of April, so there's still plenty of time, I would say. And should you have any doubts, please do not hesitate to contact us. Now, very briefly, we would like to introduce you to other actions taken by UCLG research team that complement those set by the CIB, those proposed by Learning, and also they complement the report to be submitted to the HLPF, and that can inspire you also in the reporting process. So the first project that we would like to mention is the pilot countries on SDG reporting. The goal of this action is to cooperate with several national government, local government associations whose countries are submitting their VLRs in 2020 in achieving a bottom-up, country-wide, stronger and fuller participation in their country's VLR process, and even, if possible, submit their own voluntary reviews. So currently 5 countries are participating in this initiative: Costa Rica, Nepal, Kenya, which we will know more about Kenya in a minute, Mozambique, and Benin. Secondly, the aim of the UCLG community of practice for VLR, as you can see on the screen, is to facilitate a space where LRGs will be able to exchange information on the elaboration of their own VLRs according to their own strategies and capacities. So these cities learn from each other experience, their processes, methodologies, to develop their own voluntary local reviews, the structures, contents, institutional arrangements, the process of development, and the systems of indicators that all of them or each of them is using, because they are different in each case. So cities like Barcelona, New Taipei, Durban, Cape Town, Buenos Aires, Montevideo, Bristol, Utrecht, and La Paz, they are already in the community. We are elaborating a document, the guidelines on VLRs that appeared in the list before. And these guidelines are part of this project. And so is a newsletter that will be soon launched. And we hope they can also help you give some ideas for the drafting of voluntary local reviews. So finally, UCLG participates in a cross-institutional working group on local indicators and monitoring. The idea is to exchange experiences with the United Nations Development Program, the academia, and other stakeholders which are involved on local level monitoring of the SDG localization process. So a study is currently being developed on the different systems of indicators that exist. And also, we will be glad to share it with you, to share the outputs of this study to help local and regional governments choose an indicators model that suits their own needs and capacities. So this is it from our side. We thank you very much for being here with us today and invite you to contact us should you require any further information. And as said, this presentation will be shared with all of you. And of course, we invite you to take the survey. Now, let me introduce you. I'm really happy to be able to say this. Let me introduce you to Mr. Ken Oluch from the Council of Governors and Ms. Judy Oduma from the County Assemblies Forum from Kenya. They represent the Kenyan local government associations that are participating in the countrywide pilot project on SDG reporting that I said earlier. During the following minutes, they will tell us more about the motivations about joining the initiative and contributing to the local perspective and achievements into the national review. So Judy, Ken, the floor is yours, and thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. I think I'll just take a minute or two, and then Ken will also jump in to proceed with the presentation. For us, we clearly would like to state that the system of governance in Kenya, that's devolution. This came about after the 2010 constitution, which created 2 levels of government, which are quite distinct, but then interdependent. So this system provides for sharing out of national resources equitably across the 47 counties that were created then, that is in 2013, and the national government. So if you go to Article 176 of the Constitution of Kenya, it provides clearly that there shall be a county government for each county, consisting of a county assembly and a county executive. So actually 2 arms of government at the subnational level. Then of course it proceeds to say every county government shall decentralize its functions and the provisions of its services to the extent that it is efficient and also practicable to do so. So you realize that we are actually 2, that is the Council of Governors and the County Assemblies Forum. The Council of Governors and the County Assemblies Forum were actually formed to coordinate the functions and activities of the 47 county executives and the county assemblies. We also refer to them as the legislatures at the subnational level. And these 2 organs of, that's the COG and CAF, operate interdependently from the national government, and then embrace the spirit of cooperation for the prosperity and posterity of the nation. So COG and CAF are actually key in ensuring success of devolution and therefore the implementation of SDGs. So if you look at our presentation, and actually our report at the end of the day by April, as Anne says, is actually to share an experience of some of the successes, some of the achievements, and we can call them some of the very big milestones. Sometimes are missed when we come to maybe the national reporting. Actually highlighting and really presenting wholesomely the key milestones in devolution and therefore in implementation and localization of SDGs. And I'll let Ken now proceed maybe to the next slide and just give highlights of what it is that we intend to capture in the full report. Thank you. Over to you, Ken.
Thank you very much, Judy. As Judy has put it well, the country in Kenya, we have the two distinct levels of government, the national government and the 47 county governments. And if you could just go back to the previous slide so that I can highlight the institutional framework. So Kenya has an elaborate institutional framework for SDGs implementation. As you can see, the national coordination is domiciled at Treasury and Ministry of Planning. That's where we have the National SDGs Coordination Unit or Directorate. But then the Directorate links with all the other stakeholders. We have the private sector, development partners, civil society, crucially because there's a national umbrella association for civil society. But of course, most importantly, the county governments. And from the county government, as Judy has explained, we have the executive wing of the county governments, which is now the umbrella organization is Council of Governors. Then we have the legislature, because the county governments in Kenya are distinct, and so they make laws, and so there are legislators at the local level who oversight the executive. Maybe the next slide, please. So at the county executive or the lower level of county government, we have an elaborate framework as well to guide SDGs implementation, where we have what you call the county executive committee subcommittees on SDGs, doing policy and budgeting. Then we have the county SDG steering committees, which are in charge of planning and execution. Then we have the county interagency committee on SDGs. This forum brings on board all players at the county level, including civil society and private sector, academia, and even research institutions. This is charged with the reporting. And then, of course, each county has what you're calling the county SDGs unit, which provides the secretarial support. And the SDGs unit is currently led by what you're calling county SDGs champions. Next slide, please. So some of the key milestones we can talk about in Kenya include the establishment of the SDGs unit at the Council of Governors, and of course at the County Assemblies Forum at the high level. Then we've been able to support mainstreaming of SDGs in the county integrated development plans, which are 5-year plans, which guide county programming and budgeting. Then there's the establishment of a coordination framework at the local level. I earlier on talked about the champions, SDGs champions. But most importantly is that we've had 5 counties pilot for voluntary local reporting. This was done last year, and it was some of the experiences that Kenya shared during the high-level political forum. And so linked to that is now the overall reporting that we're working on this year with support from UCLG to assess the general progress within all the 47 county governments in Kenya in terms of SDGs localization. Next slide. So you can see the expanse of the county governments in Kenya. We talked about the 47 of them, and we noted that all the counties are, for very many reasons, are at different levels of development, and that's why in our reporting for this year we are sampling experiences from all the 47 counties, looking at the geographical diversities and the economic development disparities, so that the report that will generate will provide a clear picture of the Kenyan experience in terms of localization of SDGs. Next. So in terms of the County Assemblies Forum, plays a very important role in supporting the county governments to develop supportive legislation that will support implementation of the SDGs. And then the county governments also approve rather the plans and the budgets for the counties to support implementation of SDGs. And that's why it's very important that the County Assemblies Forum are very much vast in SDGs matters, because they play the oversight role as well as approve plans and even budgets for the county governments. They also support monitoring through county assembly implementation committees. So there are operational committees in each county assembly charged with looking at different sectoral issues, health, education, agriculture, just to mention a few. So they also play a monitoring role, and importantly also the aspect of public, because our programming is public participation is entrenched in our constitution, and so for any program or activities or initiatives, the public must be engaged. Next slide. Okay. Next slide. So in terms of local reporting, what is motivating local reporting in Kenya? One is that it brings out the information on contributions from county governments in implementation of the SDGs, because we note that sometimes the national reporting does not bring the true picture. The county-specific issues are sometimes low. Reporting is very important. It enables each county to bring out specific case studies or successes, and then it also provides a forum for the county to highlight some of the challenges they are experiencing, and so that the national government can take cognizance of some of those challenges and develop maybe national policies that can address them. In terms of the local review that we are currently undertaking, specifically looking at the level of assessing the level of localization of SDGs in Kenya, we have developed a plan and we have engaged a consultant to support this process. So basically, the plan engages both arms of county government, that is the legislature and the executive, and
Hi, Ken. Are you still there?
Looks like we lost.
Sorry, we lost. Yeah,
okay.
Okay, welcome back. Yeah,
so I can proceed.
Yeah, sure, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So as I said, we are currently engaging in consultation and in collecting data from specific counties, and we have engaged a consultant to support in this process. But most importantly, we are we'll seek to document. We want to document best practice from select county governments, which could then spur or facilitate peer learning from other counties. And we can also share this with other regions or local governments across the world. Next slide. So we are basically looking at mixed methods of research, and I've talked about we've developed questionnaires. We've looked at a lot of literature review, because there are periodic reports that the county governments do, including budgeting and quarterly reports. So we are tracking at the level of budget, the budget allocation towards implementation of SDG related initiatives. Next slide. So we've virtually developed 2 sets questionnaires looking at the specific roles of the 2 arms of the government, of the county governments. One targeting the county executive, who are actually largely the implementers and designers of county programs and projects. But most importantly, also another set of questionnaires targeting the county legislature, whose main role is approval of county plans, budgets, approvals, and also representation of citizens. So the county assembly legislator also will look at aspects of public participation and bringing the angle of leaving no one behind. How have each county ensured that the vulnerable and those that are left behind incorporated in terms of programming, budget allocation, and participation? Next. So we are looking at, so that is the bit about the local review that we are working on with the UCLG. However, as you'll note, Kenya is doing its second VNR this year, having done the first one in 2017. So there's an elaborate process that is underway in Kenya, and Kenya has adopted a whole society approach to the VNR development, and the county governments have been incorporated. So there's a national interagency technical committee that is coordinating the voluntary national review process for Kenya, and already several engagements have taken place for which we have been included. And in Kenya's approach, we have not engaged a consultant. For the VNR is basically government officers led, and each of the government ministries have been assigned specific SDGs looking at the sectors. And Kenya has also looked at the international SDGs indicators and prioritized about 131 based on relevance, availability of data, and of course the national planning interest and focus. So county governments, as well as other key forums such as civil society and private sector, have been given an opportunity to participate in the process. But most importantly, also Kenya is planning to annex reports for civil society, local authorities, or rather the county governments, as well as private sector in the final VNR. Next slide.
You want? Okay, finish.
Of course, all this does not come with challenges. So we are experiencing a lot of challenges, but of course we are also working our way how to navigate through the challenges. One of the challenges has been the slow operationalization of monitoring and evaluation at the county government or subnational level. So Kenya, we have developed what you call the County Integrated Monitoring and Evaluation System, which is supposed to be operationalized at the county government level. So this is still not in place, and it's a challenge in terms of reporting and I mean progress assessment. But of course, as I noted earlier on, various counties are at different levels. So we have some county governments that have well elaborate and functional systems for monitoring and evaluation. And we are currently facilitating peer-to-peer learning between county governments so that the other counties could also learn from best cases. Then there's also continuous training and sensitization that is taking place. Then there's another aspect of data, poor data management and capacity at the county government level. So Kenya is developing a legislation that will enable strengthening of county statistics offices across the 47 counties. And then for data collection, we have, in a consultative manner with all the county governments, developed a template for data collection. So this is a standard template that all the county governments use to collect data, and then they channel the data to the, Council of Governors, CAF, and even the national government for compilation of the national report. Another aspect around data is that Kenya did a national census last year, 2019, and our census was very elaborate. We included some of the parameters that have given us data challenges in the past. And so progressively, we have data around many parameters that we've never had, especially disaggregation, inclusion, looking at social inclusion, and so gender aspects. And so we look at our VNR having more information in terms of progress. Then in political transition in county governments, as you might know, we hold elections after every 5 years. And this has in the past caused some delay especially where there's change of government or leaders. But then we have now the assumption of the Office Act, which commits the incoming leader that are put in place. Then lack of legislation to effect implementation of all goals. As Judy had mentioned earlier, our devolution is just about 2013 to date, 7 years old, and so we are still young in it. And so county governments still require a lot of legislation to implement some of the policy programs and so forth. And so this technical assistance to county assemblies forums on policy development is a very key aspect. Next. So in terms of role and value addition, areas that we think we still need to do a lot of more include area of technical assistance, both levels of county governments, continuous sensitization, and support in data management and monitoring evaluation, and then support to development of M&D systems at both levels, looking at the county assemblies and even the county executive. Next. Thank you very much. I think that I'll come to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Ken and Judy, and Anna and Rafael, of course, as well. I heard many interesting things, and I think the build-up was very interesting to first kind of elaborate a little further on the theoretical backgrounds, a bit on the process level by Anna, and then conclude with this practical case in Kenya. We're also doing quite okay time-wise, I see. That does not happen very often, so that's good to see. So we have quite some time left. We scheduled to have this webinar until 10:30 to answer some questions. And I already saw quite some interesting questions in the chat box. So once again, if you would like to open the chat box, please hover with your mouse over the screen, then go to the bottom, and then in the middle, there's this text balloon. If you click on it, then you can, then the webinar chat will open. There's also a Q&A section. There are also some questions there. So we'll just try to answer those one by one. And I think also for the sake of trying to get this interactive with all the participants who are joining, I would like to try to give the floor to the one who asked the question themselves. I think that would be, yeah, thanks for switching to this screen. So we'll try to make this work, and I will try to find one of the panelists to answer that question. I think the question in the chat box of Hannah Alberts of VVSG, she asked quite a few questions, I see, so you're doing great, Hannah, thank you for sharing. As a first question, I will read it out loud. Is there any news on how the HLPF will be held this year? Since classic meetings will not be possible, classic physical meetings, or is there any clarity on when this will be decided? And if there's no HLPF this year, will UCLG provide alternatives for local government reports? I think a good question, maybe not easy to answer also from our side. I think we're still awaiting clarification on that as well. But maybe that second part is worth trying to answer. Will UCLG provide any alternatives in case the HLPF will not go on this year? Hannah, would you like to? Is that a clear understanding of your question, or would you like to add something to that?
No, that's clear.
Yeah, perfect. Raphael.
Yes.
Could you maybe try to answer that if possible?
Yes, I can try, and then maybe Anna can complete my answer. Well, at the moment, it's basically pretty unsure. No, nobody knows how things gonna be in July, but it seems it's gonna be rather impossible that we're going to have the HLPF like in the last years with full representation. At the moment, we're exploring ways how we could do this. I mean, in the past, I know from my own, I know that, for example, several UN meetings in New York have been reduced to just a physical presentation of stuff who's anywhere based in New York, and the rest was done via virtual participation. I could imagine that it's going to be very similar for the HLPF this year. But anyway, I can assure you that UCLG will do everything that's possible to represent local and regional governments in our network, respectively, also this year's HLPF. And maybe Anna can add some more on the current preparations for the report and more the thematic representation. I don't know.
Yeah, as you said, everything's in the air, nothing's clear. Well, the only thing that is clear is that we will keep working on the report. And even if it's not a physical presentation of the report at the HLPF, which is foreseen for July, we will ensure that this report gets to the United Nations and is disseminated among national governments as well, because the information it will contain, it will be crucial to keep working for the SDG implementation. I don't know if we're gonna do like a webinar somehow, or we cannot tell you yet, but we will keep you informed about it.
Well, I hope this answers your question, more or less.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. And Hannah, just maybe one additional question related to your first question. There are several questions in your first question as well, I see. So you also refer to the thing it would be nice to have some lessons learned on the VLR approach of local governments. Could you maybe ask that question yourself so it becomes clear what you're asking for, and then maybe we can try to answer that part as well?
Yeah, sure. Because In Flanders, from VVSG, we are starting up a working group on SDG reporting, not necessarily with the goal to create VLRs in the sense that they have to be presented towards the United Nations, but rather how do you make an SDG report for your own local government. And I've gone through many of the VLRs that already exist, but I'm missing a little bit, and also the city of Ghent has taken some steps towards making up a VLR, but I don't know if there are already some lessons learned on the approach, which steps, for example, which steps in the process did local governments take? When did they take these steps? What went well? What did not went well? Would they have done things differently during the process with the information they have afterwards? What's the actual goal of the VLR? How will they use it in the future? So these kind of lessons learned, because as you said, Anna, there are also multiple ways to approach the report. You can focus on some SDGs, you can focus on all SDGs. You can include different stakeholders, maybe just your own local government, but you can also involve civil society, academia, private sector. You have long VLRs, short VLRs. I don't think there is one right way to approach this, but are there lessons learned from these different types of approaches? Depending on the goal you have with the VLR, which kind of approach is the best one? Is it focusing on some SDGs, focusing on all? Which stakeholders do you involve according to the goal you have with your VLR? So these kind of things, I don't know if UCLG is working on drawing these kind of lessons learned from the VLRs that already exist. Sorry, there's a lot of questions in this one question. But also I think, especially with regard to the political sensibilities, because the city of Ghent, they told me we want to write, from the administration point of view, we really want to write a critical report, but it's not always easy because you need that political approval for the report as well. And sometimes they want to highlight some of the good practices. Each politician has its own focus area, and they want to see that focus area in the report with the good practices from their focus areas and their responsibilities. Some of them are also a bit wary of critical notes in the report, of for example, if on some indicators you are not doing well, they feel that they will if it's in the report. So are there any, how did the other cities deal with these kind of political sensibilities in writing the VLRs? I don't think that this all has to be discussed or answered right now, but maybe afterwards, Rafael or Anna, we can also have a one-on-one discussion on this.
Yes, of course. We're always happy, I think, to catch up with our members, especially in this topic. Before, I think I will pass again the word to Anna, because I know she's much more into this topic with managing also the community of practice. We try to do exactly this exercise, of delivering somehow a roadmap of how to do a VLR. Last year we made like a short flyer, it's a 2-page flyer, comparing a few examples like Seoul and New York. So maybe that's like a good starting point if you're looking for some kind of roadmap or instruction or whatever, even though, as you say, it's very complicated because every city has its own reality. But I think maybe Anna can tell you a little bit more on the work that the community of practice is doing, because I think they're going in exactly this direction.
Thank you. Well, the community of practice is actually starting. The first meeting was launched during the WUF in Abu Dhabi this year. So we're smoothly going into the process. But actually, it's a very good thing to point out these lessons learned and things to improve in the future. We haven't. What I want to say is that we haven't gone through this point like systematically. but I think there are some VLRs. I cannot remember which now, but I think there are some VLRs that include this part of lessons learned and for the continuation of this process. I will get back to you as soon as I can, as soon as I have time to go through them and tell you more about it. Of course, there are many lessons to learn. From my experience, I can tell you that, well, you were saying it, political legitimacy is very important. And as I was saying earlier, it also entails problems. Sometimes politicians cannot be so motivated as the technical level. And I have seen it in with several local governments that I have worked with. Also, they can use it as a corporate social responsibility thing. I just want to underline that the SDGs is not just an end, it's a framework. It's part of a process, and transparency is also part of this process that is governance. It has to go hand in hand, like promoting the SDGs, but also promoting transparency, accountability at the same time. And in this line, I know that we're in April, the high-level political forum is in July. So in this sense, there's not so much time to change our organizations like strategically to turn them upside down. But it's a process that maybe not for this year's VLR, if someone is interested in producing their own, but maybe for next year, start thinking about the SDGs as a framework, as it's a whole process. What was I gonna say? Yeah, one of the problems that I've seen related to this is like this siloing that I was talking about earlier. Like, you cannot expect that all of a sudden we wanna produce a VLR and everyone's gonna know how to work in a cross-sectoral manner, all the whole departments together. But as I was saying, I think it's worth an effort to start now trying to change these dynamics, these internal dynamics. Just the final thing, I don't know if I helped you with the answer, but yeah, I think you raised a very good point with the lessons learned. We will take it into account for sure for the community of practice. And we will try to, in this newsletter that we will produce, that will be soon launched, we will try to like make a case or a specific part for these lessons learned. So thank you in this sense for your proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, let's quickly go to the next question. I see your...
Edgardo Bilski is raising his hand, so Edgardo Bilski, leader of the research team, we can let him add something.
Of course, please take the floor. Yes.
Only one answer. Thank you very much, colleague.
Good morning.
Only one answer. Good morning, all of you. Only one answer to Anna from BBSC. Anna, we are currently working on a briefing guide that we will share with all our members of the community of practices. And in this regard, we will be very happy to share with you to look how your experience can contribute to that. Some of the questions you are putting on there are approached in this briefing. Okay? Thank you very much.
Sorry, the sound was not that well. Can somebody repeat what Edgardo said?
Yes, I'm sorry. Edgardo was saying that many of the questions that you raised are addressed in the guidelines that we are producing, and that we will start disseminating these guidelines very soon, and we will get to you so you can have them too.
Okay, thank you, Edgardo, for this additional contribution. So yeah, the second question, I think Jorn Geiselman asked a very interesting question with regard to a multi-stakeholder reflection. I think Anna also mentioned something about including stakeholders, I think, in this process, as well as Ken and Judy. But maybe Jorn, may I ask you to ask your question directly to Anna?
Yes, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I work for GIZ, for an international network called Partners for Review, and I really liked your all the three presentations. Maybe my question is equally a comment and a question, and you're right. I think you touched upon some of the issues in other parts of your presentation. I just had the impression that when you talked about how to conduct a VLR, that there was a lot of emphasis on data, and yeah, my comment or question was, isn't it not only about data, but maybe equally importantly about really having a, you know, a national conversation or a local conversation in this case about SDG progress that uses data, but it's not about producing a report, you know, with lots of figures and tables, but in the end it's having rigorous data and using these as a basis for a joint reflection or dialogue on how to move the city's work forward vis-a-vis the SDGs. So I don't know if you agree with that, or I just wanted to clarify that and see whether you share that, or whether you really think that data is, you know, the core issue that needs to be looked at during the VLR.
So of course, I think you're completely right. In my opinion, the SDGs cannot just be assessed by seeing if you comply with the indicators, with the specific indicators proposed by the United Nations or not. Data is a very big part of it. We need data to assess precisely what you were saying on progress, bottlenecks. Data show this, but also I think we have to introduce the qualitative assessment. And for this, for example, the agenda is not just goals, targets, indicators. It also has a set of underlying principles. It's a multi-stakeholder approach, multi-level governance. It's about transparency and accountability. It's about producing, having done a diagnose before. It's about inclusiveness, leaving no one behind. And of course, these can also be assessed qualitative. And this is not about saying that we comply with the SDG 6 point, I don't know, because 99% of the population, 100% of the population have tap water in their houses. It's also about seeing how we change our internal governance, as I was saying before, how this process, this SDG framework helps us be more transparent, co-create, like reach our local stakeholders, involve them in the production of our policies, of our projects, trying to co-create with them the local realities. And so I think you're right when you say that data is not everything. I don't know if I answered your question, or I think we are.
No, thanks for the. Yes, I want to say I think we're on the same page. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you very much, both. So time is passing by rather soon, eventually. So we've got about 4 minutes. I think there is room for one more question. Susanna Renel, may I briefly give the floor to you to quickly ask the question, then we can try to answer it also very, very briefly. Susanna? Susanna, are you still there? I see, yes, I see a mic getting unmuted there. We cannot hear you, Susanna.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, Susanna. Please feel free to share your question you asked at the beginning of the webinar.
Yes, we are just.
We've got some echo in the connection.
Yes.
Yes, I think we're getting better. Please share your question.
We just made our report for SDGs, and as I said, that our focus in this government is sanitary and clean water. This is islands archipelago government. Many islands in this our government is many islands here, and you know, we just need some suggestion from you all to start our report, this report.
Okay, so panelists, yeah, the connection was a bit troubling, but Raphael or Anna, can you maybe give an answer? Is the question clear enough? Otherwise, we could also try to answer it after the webinar, but if you could enlighten a bit already, that would be great.
I understand that the question is, I'm just reading the chat. She was writing, we will just compile an SDG report as an archipelago city in Indonesia, while sanitation, clean water, and proper housing are our focus. After this report, we hope that we will have the full support of UCLG. And are there any suggestions for enriching our report? I see two questions here. I will answer one, and then I will maybe let Edgardo Bilski contribute to it also. Well, what I'm thinking of with your explanation and question is that you want to focus, if I understood right, in sanitation, clear water, and proper housing. That will be SDGs 6 and 11. As I said, you can always focus on specific SDGs and specific targets that are a priority for your territory. But what I would suggest is that you don't forget that the agenda is how to call it, an integral set of things. It's not just housing. Housing is related to, we are seeing it today, we are all at home, so we can see how housing is related to Islamification, housing is related to gender violence, housing is related to the provision of basic services like water. So what I would suggest is that don't lose this part, don't miss this part in your report. Don't just focus on housing specifically. Think also about everything that is connected to it. Because as I said, the way to approach the agenda, the best way to approach it is with an integral focus. Yes, I don't know if Rafa, Stan, Edgardo, you want to add?
Yeah, maybe just one point regarding how we could help you, or how cooperation could help you to do that. I think I would maybe refer first to our local section. So I would maybe recommend to reach out to UCLG ASPAC, which is UCLG's section for the Asia and Pacific. They are based in Jakarta, and they're a great team. We collaborate very well with them, and I know that they also have many projects and collaborations going on within Indonesia to support local governments in the SDG localization process. And I'm also sure that it might be interesting to get in contact with the Local Government Association of Indonesia. I think it's called Kempaksi, or please don't get me wrong if I spell it incorrectly, because I think they also have many projects on SDG localization, and they might be even much closer to collaborate and assist you in this task than we might be able to do from Barcelona.
I don't know if we have more time, Stan, but I would like to, because I saw an interesting question and by Carl Wright. I'm very happy, Carl, that you are here with us today. It revolved around the idea of the SDGs and what is happening right now with the coronavirus. The question was somehow if there are best practices that show how we can link these SDGs to what is happening right now, not just health issues, which would be SDG 3, if I'm not wrong, but also other issues that are at stake, housing, as I was saying, but also public transportation, many things. In this regard, I will take this opportunity, as we are all here, to invite you to visit the website that Metropolis has created along with the ALLAS project and UCLG. It's called citiesforglobalhealth.org. You will find many case studies, many initiatives that LRGs themselves are uploading with regards to the management of this crisis. And you can see there are many initiatives revolving around many different topics: health, mobility, technologies, anything you can think of. You can resort to this webpage and it can give you ideas as to how to manage this crisis, and of course the post-crisis, which is also very important. And also in this sense, we are from UCLG, we are launching several live learning experiences on these topics. Yesterday we had a live learning experience on the relationship between COVID-19 and digital technologies. You can have more information on the UCLG website, what experiences are left, what are the main issues that arose during the past sessions with press releases, and we will be very happy if you have a look, and of course if they can help you somehow in this crisis.
Thank you so much, Anna. Yeah, I think we have reached the end of this webinar. There are some questions we have not yet answered, so apologies for that. I saw Najat, Carl, and Ladislas asked some very good questions. Although I see that Sarah answered came back to the question of Ladislas in the chat. But we'll come back to every question which has not been answered already. Yeah, so I would sincerely like to thank all the speakers for your contributions. Thank you to all the other participants as well for your attention and questions and remarks. We will send you the PowerPoint presentation after this session, as mentioned at the beginning, so that you can read the slides again and reflect on how your association can become more involved in the SDG reporting process. And we'll be happy to get in contact later on as well if any other questions would rise. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. UCLG invites you to fill out the survey, which has been talking about, and to download the learning module number 3. Also important to mention once more, I think. We hope to stay in touch and to see you soon in other events. Thanks again, panelists, and everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, and thanks.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Bye.
Thank you so much.